Alright, what's up guys? Thanks for stopping by my channel. My name is John, and today we're going to be learning how to make neumorphic buttons. A neumorphic button is something on the screen that almost looks like it's coming off of the screen in a very soft manner. It almost makes the screen look like a material in itself. Here's some examples of neumorphic designs that I'm really into. And if you wouldn't mind leaving a like below for the YouTube algorithm and subscribing for some more content if you'd like to see it, that would be very much appreciated. Alright, with that out of the way, let's get into it. Alright, so this is the final design we're going to be making. It's a super soft UI element, super soft looking button. Like I said, it kind of looks like it's almost popping off the screen. Full disclosure, in terms of usability, this probably isn't the best option to use. It is super trendy right now to use neumorphic designs. However, for people who don't have the best eyesight, buttons like this can be kind of difficult to see. So while it does look really cool, it might not be the best for usability for all people. However, if you're making something for mainly aesthetic purposes, this can be a great option because it is really clean, simplistic, minimalist look, and I'm super fond of neumorphic designs. So what we're going to do to start off is just create a new document, obviously. Doesn't really matter what size, we're just going to go with 1920 by 1080, and I'm just going to copy this in here so we have it as a reference for the design that we're building. So the first thing that you're going to want to do is create a rectangle over your full artboard. The shortcut for that is just hit M, or else you can click over in the toolbar and then drag it to cover your whole artboard. Then we're going to remove the stroke because there's just no need for it. And we'll change the background color to this light blue that we have over on this top one. The hex code for that is F0F5F7. So you can feel free to type that into your hex number, and that'll give you the exact color. Then we're going to draw another square to actually create our button. So the first thing that we're going to do is round these corners a little bit so it kind of creates a softer element. Like I said, we're kind of going for a super soft look, so rounded corners are definitely the best option for this button. Then we're going to change the color to a full white just so it's easier for us to see, but we'll be changing that later. So the first thing that we're going to do is actually duplicate the shape. You can do this by holding Alt on your keyboard and clicking and dragging the shape away to another spot, which will copy and paste the shape. This is going to make more sense later in the video why we needed to copy this shape. So the next thing that we're going to do is apply a drop shadow. So you'll go over to your effects panel, click stylize and drop shadow. Then you're going to want to make sure your X and Y offset are around 12. This is going to be something you're going to probably need to play with depending on the size of the button that you're creating and the size of your artboard. But these are general rules of thumb if you're working in a 1920 by 1080 workspace with a button about the same size that I'm creating here. So for this first drop shadow, we're going to change the hex code to 3754AA. This is going to work as long as you're copying the same color palette that I'm doing, but if you're doing something warmer or maybe even cooler than I'm doing, you might need to play with the colors. But for the color scheme that I'm going with, this is going to work pretty well. Like I said, you might just have to play with it if you're going for a different look. So right off the bat, you can see when we have preview selected that is crazy vibrant and we really don't need that much color. So what we're going to do is lower the opacity to about 15. You can see that got a lot softer. This gave us a nice gentle drop shadow below the shape. And then we're going to add another drop shadow, which will be basically an opposite drop shadow to the last one we applied. You might get a warning panel that lets you know that you're applying another instance of this effect. Don't worry about that. You can just say apply new effect because you do want these to be two separate drop shadows. This drop shadow is basically going to be the opposite of the last one that we applied. So what you're going to want to do is make this one a solid white drop shadow. So the first thing you're going to want to do is change the opacity to 100% because 15% white you really just can't see on a light background like this. And then you're going to want to change the X and the Y offset to the exact opposite of the last drop shadow that you applied. So we'll just add a negative sign in front of the X and Y. And that blur looks okay for right now. We might adjust it later. And now we're going to start using the second shape that we copied before. The reason we created this second shape is to isolate the inner glow. So the inner glow, when it is applied to a shape that has a drop shadow, does some weird stuff. I'm not exactly sure why, but if you just create another shape layer and apply it directly to that one, then it won't do anything funky. So we'll just head over to our effects panel, hit stylize, and click inner glow. So I already have this set to what I did on the last project, but you're just going to want to make sure your blend mode is normal. Do the same hex code as we did for the last drop shadow, which was 3754AA. And then you're going to want your opacity to be about 8% and blur to be 37 pixels approximately, and make sure you're blending from the edge in, so click the edge button. Settings in terms of opacity and blur might be a little bit different depending, again, on the size of your shape and the size of your artboard, but you might just have to play with that a little bit. But again, for this artboard and this shape, these are pretty good settings. And then you're going to want to change the fill of that shape to the same fill that is existing in the background. So you can just take your eyedropper tool and click right on the background. Alright, this is looking pretty good, but one final touch that we're going to add to the button itself is a stroke. A stroke makes the shape pop a little bit more and makes it a little bit more visible for people who can't necessarily see quite as well or don't have as much contrast in their vision. So we're going to add the white stroke and move it up to about, say, 2 or 3 points. We're going to go with 3. And yeah, it's looking pretty good from this point. Okay, now that we have our main button done, what we're going to do is head over to flat icon and just grab a quick power button image so we have something to put on the front of the button to kind of give it a little bit of context. You're going to want to download an SVG of the file. That's pretty important. That way it's super scalable within Illustrator. And then once you have it downloaded, you'll just drag that SVG file into Illustrator. When you drag an SVG into Illustrator, it will automatically open it in a new document, so all you have to do is copy the shape and paste it into your project that you're working on. Just close out the old file. So we're going to scale this up to about how big we want it to be on the button, and we're going to be changing the fill to pure white. This pure white will make it visible off that background color. Then the final thing we're going to be doing is adding a drop shadow to this button icon. So we'll just go again over to the effects panel, stylize, and drop shadow. We'll make sure that the X offset is 12 approximately. Again, this is kind of depending on your taste. And we'll make sure that the fill is the same color as the first drop shadow that we added to the button. So again, the hex code for that is 3754AA. Okay, now we have a pretty solid looking button, and I'm pretty happy with this. So again, like I said, this isn't necessarily the most user-friendly in terms of niche groups that don't have the best vision, so it's not the most usable option, and a lot of people have gripes with neumorphic style design because of this. They say it's just not as functional as a standard style button. However, if you're going for purely aesthetics over functionality, this is a really good looking design, and it's one of my favorite ways to design something aesthetic. And it's one of my favorite ways to create a minimalist look throughout your application or whatever you may be designing. Alright guys, thanks so much for watching this video. If you wouldn't mind leaving a like below for the YouTube algorithm if this video helped you out, that would be very much appreciated. And subscribe if you're interested in more content like this, because I'm going to be trying to post daily again. Alright, thanks so much for watching. Later.